After being spited out of a visit to Six Flags in New England last year in 2020, I finally made it out this year on my East Coaster road trip. Come on, Massachusetts, it took you long enough to reopen your amusements, and I'm still not over it. Anyways, my first experience here was a rather interesting one, with rain lasting all day long, flooded queue lines following a 2-day closure from a crazy storm in the area, and some unexpectedly awesome operations. Fortunately though, these things did not take away from the fact that I was able to get on all 11 operating roller coasters in the park. Yo, RCDB, you've really got to update that SFNE page because this thing sure as hell is not operating anymore. But otherwise, I was really pleased with the amount of rides I got on, even if re-rides weren't really possible due to eventual ride closures. In this video, I'm going to be ranking all of them up from worst to best in accordance with my experience and opinions. But before we get into the video, a quick reminder that dropping a like and subscribing to the channel is the absolute best way to show your support. But with that being said, let's waste no more time and dive right into the list. This is the top 11 roller coasters at Six Flags New England. Number 11, Great Chase. I'll say having an ENF Kids coaster as your worst is not too bad at all. I for one really enjoy the manufacturer's small designs, and Great Chase was no exception. It had a good chunk of airtime in the back, and the layout was rather unique too. Where most of these kids coasters have helixes going to the left, Great Chase's helix goes to the right. It isn't something that makes the ride better or worse than others of its genre, but it was an observation I made. In general, a really fun small scale roller coaster. Number 10, Catwoman's Whip. Although your typical Zero Tivoli coaster, my experience on Catwoman's Whip was honestly pretty hilarious. I don't have any pictures or videos of what happened, but a big chunk of the queue line was flooded for starters, and it made getting to the station very difficult and kind of an adventure. As for the actual ride experience, we'd zoom by trees and plants that would literally splash us with water after being shaken up. It was insane. Genuinely speaking, without these two things, I do not think I'd like Catwoman's Whip as much as I did. It was a fine ride on its own, but my experience made it my favorite ride I've gotten on a Zero Tivoli coaster. Number 9, Gotham City Gauntlet Escape from Arkham Asylum. This was an interesting coaster because I could not decide if it were a horrible wild mouse or an incredibly good one. What do I mean by that? Well, there were literally 2 trim brakes that kicked in the whole ride, and they were both at the very end of the ride. None of them on the top level with the hairpin turns did, meaning the laterals felt dangerously insane. Having a Fred right beside me, this was not the most comfortable thing in the world because we kept slamming into one another, but I have to give this ride praise or at least acknowledge that it is absolutely wild in that department. Also, can we just talk about that name for a second? This very well might be one of the longest coaster names ever. Gotham City Gauntlet Escape from Arkham Asylum. If it were just Gotham City Gauntlet or just Escape from Arkham Asylum, that would be fine, but the fact that it's both in one name is literally hilarious. This is a bizarre wild mouse coaster in almost every aspect. Let me just leave it at that. Number 8, Flashback. Although not the worst Vekoma boomerang I've ridden, Flashback was pretty typical in that it was rather shaky and rather intense. I really do not have much to talk about here since I've talked about numerous other boomerangs on this channel in the past, all of which ride the exact same as this one. But I placed it at 8 because it doesn't run good or bad for a boomerang, it's just about normal in my opinion. Number 7, Pandemonium. Yet another coaster clone. I'll say that this is not a bad one, but it's a pretty common ride that I've very much gotten used to. It has a pretty fun windy layout with turns, helixes, drops, and hills, and sometimes it spins fast depending on weight distribution. Best part though, it's smooth and fun, and that's all you can really say about it. I'm sure most of you guys watching have ridden at least one of these Pandemonium clones, so you can probably echo exactly what I was saying. Number 6, Thunderbolt. Finally, an original roller coaster. This coaster is rather interesting too, as it's a Woody built way back in 1941. I will say though, for its age, it provides a very solid ride experience. It's pretty smooth and has some of that bizarre airtime where you get tugged down declining each hill. If I had to make a comparison to another old wooden coaster I've ridden, I would compare Thunderbolt to something like Judge Roy's Scream at Six Flags Over Texas, and maybe even Roller Coaster at Lagoon. Those are other examples of wooden coasters that run generally smooth and have that weird last second airtime on its hills. I'm definitely glad Six Flags New England is putting in the maintenance and the effort to keep this thing around, and I hope the hard work is paying off because it still does get some of the longer lines in the park. Sure, that may be because it's situated at the front of the park, but I genuinely think it's a coaster that most people will enjoy for what it's worth. Number 5, Riddler Revenge. No, not the humongous stand-up coaster at Magic Mountain. This Riddler is your very common Vekoma SLC clone. With that said, this is one of the best out there for having vest restraints that allow for absolutely zero headbanging. You still can't change the fact that it runs a little janky, but seriously, this is not a bad ride at all. Matter of fact, it's a pretty enjoyable coaster as you're able to appreciate the intense layout without getting your head beat into a pulp. So again, shouts out to Six Flags New England for taking good care of a ride that can easily be atrocious without getting proper TLC. For those of you watching who really dislike SLCs, still give this one a shot and maybe try and appreciate the good that it offers the best you can. Number 4, Joker. Guys, we really can't catch a break with the clone coasters, can we? Thankfully though, this is the last one in the park's lineup, and the very best one too, actually. This is the same SNS 40 Freespin coaster that you can find at most other Six Flags parks around North America. This one was my personal 5th I'd ridden, and I'd probably put it right in the middle of the bunch. Like the others, this one had some awesome and smooth 360-degree rotations, as well as some intensity that comes with those flips. It is a short ride and doesn't offer much besides that, but it's honestly really fun if you are not prone to motion sickness. I do know a lot of people that tend to dislike these free spin coasters, but I'm actually not one of those people, and I usually have really good things to say about my rides on them. Even if they are cloned a bunch, they're smooth, they're fun, and they flip a lot, so it's pretty cool stuff. Number 3, Batman the Dark Knight. Why does literally no one talk about this ride? Compared to all other B&M floorless coasters, including the international ones, this is easily one of the least talked about. I assume that this was because it's on a smaller scale, or maybe it just isn't too good, but I came off really liking the ride. I thought it was very smooth, had some awesome inversions, and a solid layout too. I don't even think this would rank at the bottom of a floorless ranking had I ridden them all. Currently it is towards the bottom of my list, but that's just because I really liked all the floorless coasters I've ridden. Don't sleep on this thing too much though, it's a pretty good B&M that I honestly was impressed with. Number 2, Superman the Ride. Kicking off the top 2 on this list, the following rides are the reason coaster enthusiasts make the trek out to this park. While a lot of people say these two are interchangeable, I easily think this one falls behind the top spot, but with that being said, it's still an excellent coaster. Superman the Ride was one of the original Intamin hyper coasters, as it was built in the year 2000, but amongst them all, this may have one of the best layouts. Personally, I would say Superman the Ride is one of the best coaster layouts I've ever seen, actually. It has a perfect run of airtime hills out and back with the crazy spaghetti bowl section to end things out. The one and only problem I have with the ride is the overwhelming potential it had when it used to run with its original trains. For those of you who don't know, this coaster had to receive new trains with bulkier U-brick style lap bars following an incident a long while ago. These trains and its lap bar do unfortunately take away from some airtime and the pacing, so I can only imagine how fantastic it would be if it still ran with those old trains. Still though, the layout is phenomenal and the airtime is good and strong, so we have to appreciate what the coaster does still accomplish. It's truly a fantastic ride, though it may be the slightest bit overrated since it really does not rival the number 1 spot. Let's get right into it. Number 1, Wicked Cyclone. Am I the only one who's surprised Six Flags went through with this layout? Wicked Cyclone could have easily ended up like Twisted Cyclone with 2 laps around the structure, but instead there's 3. And contrary to what a lot of people will tell you, it does not lose steam at all, at least when I rode it earlier this month. The ride charges through every element, every inversion, and every hill with such an incredible pace in my opinion. One of the things I love the most about Wicked Cyclone is that it has quality and quantity. A lot of coasters can only claim one of these things to fame, but this ride excels in both. It's an absolutely incredible layout, maybe more so than Superman's, and all of the elements are executed to perfection. I'll be honest, I went in expecting a mid-tier to slightly upper mid-tier RMC because I've heard complaints revolving around the pacing. But oh my gosh, this ride never let up for me, not even a little bit. I don't know if something happened to the ride or if I rode it at an especially good time or an especially good season, but I'm going to use my experience to tell you guys that it is worth a visit to the park in itself right now. This is an easy top 15 roller coaster I've ridden out of the 359 I've been on right now. Hopefully that gives you an idea to how impeccable this ride is and persuades you to take a trip out to the park and get on this incredible RMC hybrid coaster. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video where I ranked all 11 operating roller coasters at Six Flags New England. If you agreed with the list or would like to comment about the coasters in the park, feel free to drop them down below in the comments. Also, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as it's the best way to show your support. With that said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys.